So I guess, moral of the story, this is an exciting and also sad day. I'm finally moving on from my primary that's been with me for the last 3 years, my Silverback TAC 41. And it's time we do an upgrade series on the SRS. I won't be moving on from it entirely. However, I want to start to give the SRS a try. Love Silverback's replicas. This is my TAC 41, almost completely bone stock. It's ran me super well. I've had tons of fun gameplay with it, and the only things that I ever really changed, besides adding a sight and some mounts and cameras and whatnot, is the spring and the outer and inner barrel and bucking. Other than that, this thing was, and still is, my pride and joy. So, moving forward, this is now my Silverback SRS. And before we get into the upgrades, because we have a lot on the way, a lot of stuff coming, a lot of really crazy videos, I wanted to quickly address all of the plans that I have for this guy, exactly what I want to do to it, and how we're going to achieve that. Now, in terms of gameplay and style and build of this piece, a few things that I want to focus on: making this sniper the best of its capability for the fields that I primarily play on. Now, and obviously my playstyle. Two things, if you know about me and you've watched any of my videos, I tend to be a very mobile person. I can't sit still for long periods of time, and since I primary sniping, that's kind of weird in most cases. A lot of the fields that I play on tend to be a little bit smaller, but also we do have larger fields. Now, due to that, the gameplay that we play and some of the game modes that we play tend to require me to move a little bit further into the front line, a little bit quicker with my team to help support them. Otherwise, sitting too far back, if we manage to push them backwards and achieve what we're trying to achieve, it's useless. I'm never going to see anybody because of how much stuff is in the way, no matter where I go, which is a great design of my field, but that requires me to move and be mobile. Due to that, there's little rest time, so I want to make this guy light. Light is important. Also, with the constant moving, mobility is essential. So we're going to keep it as short as possible. Now you notice, I believe this is either the sport or the covert version. So it's much shorter. But we're going to even shorten it, which is great. We also, since we tend to be pretty close to the enemy's front line and pretty close to the enemy at most times, and with any sniper I'd recommend this, we want to make this guy as quiet as possible. Alongside that, I'm moving a lot, I'm mobile a lot. Being that I'll be really close, there's going to be a very little downtime, so I'll be shooting a lot. Now, we want to make sure this is as high power or as high FPS as we can get it to our field's limits, which are 500 FPS. As well, we want to make sure that it's as light of a bolt pull as possible, because I'll be racking the bolt pretty often, because, again, we're going to be pretty close to the enemies. But without further ado, I think it's important to explain how we're going to achieve these things. So I kind of want to work my way from front to back on how we're going to achieve these things and what these will do for us. The first thing I want to discuss is the scope. With the scope, we want as much eye relief as possible. We want something light, obviously, that's not going to be too big and bulky, and something that stays really, really low and close to the barrel or the main receiver of the sniper, so that we have the most accuracy possible. If it's a little bit too high, you tend to wind up having a little bit less accuracy, just because sometimes you're aiming and maybe your barrel is pointing or a little bit lower, so you might be pointing at a barrel or something like that. But the scope is the least of the concern right now. The barrel. How are we going to make this shorter? Well, what I plan to do, if you can see, this barrel is maybe 5 inches or so away from the base of the receiver. And it's also a 14 millimeter thread with a 14 millimeter, I guess, thickness barrel for those little thin boys. These also have the opportunity to go G-Spec. G-Spec, I believe, turns this barrel into a 23 millimeter clockwise thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order a G-Spec barrel. I'm going to order the 12-incher, and we're going to butt that barrel right up to the edge of the lower receiver. What's great about that is the barrel is still super long because it's a bullpup, right? With the TAC 41, I can only go so short because, well, the barrel starts right back here. Or I guess technically where the hop-up is, right? So the SRS, that's great. We can go a little bit stubbier. With that, I believe the inner barrel length is going to be somewhere around 303 millimeters, but that'll also round about to 12 inches. With that G-spec, it also allows us to go to the silverback suppressor category. I'm going to get a nice short and stubby suppressor, something a little chunky to sit on the end of this and keep that nice thick look, because I do like the thick look up front because it's already a relatively thin replica. Moving into the middle of the receiver, a few things that I want to do is I want to upgrade to a match grade trigger, maybe a 2-stage trigger, one that will allow me to start a pull and click so that I know when it's about to fire, and then I can hold with the minimal amount of movement, and it will allow me to predict exactly what I'm going to shoot, because if you don't know, when you don't know when it's going to shoot, sometimes you do jerk when it does, and that could dissipate accuracy. And with Airsoft, as much as it is not real steel, it matters more because the plastic projectiles are much more unpredictable. So after we move back from the trigger, the next thing is the hop unit. I want to switch off the hop unit. What's cool about the Silverback SRS as opposed to the TAC 41 and most replicas is you have a top-down center hop, right? With the SRS, it actually comes with a right and left hop adjustment, so you can adjust top-down center, but also a small trajectory of right and left. Super weird, super unique, but top-down center seems to be the way to go. So I'm going to get something that I can adjust on the fly. I want some sort of a rotary hop-up on the inside. And I believe with the rotary hop-up that I'm going to be ordering, it actually allows us to switch off to VSR, I guess, style barrels or gas blowback style barrels, and more than likely we're going to wind up going with a flamingo bucking because I'm just a fan of those. I've also heard good things about the Autobot buckings, but I'm going to do some research in the forums. But that's the barrel we're going to upgrade to, and then obviously the hop unit. Not sure which one yet, but you'll see when the upgrade series comes. Now, with the bolt, I actually very much so like the little rounded I guess gripper, a little ball on the end. I'm a big fan of it, so I'm likely not going to change that. Maybe if we can get this guy customized and do like don't steal my ideas, but I would love to get like a mosquito and amber on the end of this, kind of like the old Jurassic Park films. That would be seriously cool. But if anyone's got any ideas, you let me know. And then we're going to upgrade the piston. The piston and the piston head are going to be what are going to allow us to make this much quieter alongside that suppressor. If you didn't know, with suppressors in Airsoft, the only time suppressors actually work are with springers, right? And non-gas blowbacks. Non-blowbacks. Gas blowbacks, all the noise is going to come majority from the receiver, and electric or AEG is definitely going to come from the gears, so you really can't suppress them. But with springers, you can. For the piston, I'm likely going to go for the Wasp piston. It's got a little bit of a variable in weight that we can adjust, so we can play around with power a tad bit, and it will also help make it nice and quiet. I believe that will also work with the gas blowback style rotary hops that we're going to be installing, and then a spring to match, hopefully to get us or to allow us to push that 500 SPS range. When doing so, I will have to figure out what I'm going to do, because at the moment I do not have a chronograph. I don't know why. I've never purchased one. I'm a doofus for not doing so. If there's a company out there that wants to team up for this project and maybe send me one, that would be phenomenal. But for now, I'll probably just use the one at my local playing field. And I guess one of the last upgrades that I think is absolutely essential for sound and ease of use, moving into the far back of the replica. In the stock, you have two things. You have a sear, or a, I guess, piston catch, and then you have this big open empty case. To make things a little bit more quiet, since this is where all of those fast-moving parts are, we're going to stuff this guy full of foam. It's going to help quiet down the noise next to the ear and make it just a little bit more quiet when firing. And then the sear, one of the biggest upgrades I have been told to get. There's a sear in the back of the SRS that catches the piston, and then when you pull the trigger, it releases. The sear, for some reason, the way it's shaped, adds a little bit of extra force when you pull the bolt back towards the end, which is the hardest portion of pulling the bolt back because that's when the spring is most compressed. There is a open style sear, I believe it is, a steel one that you can upgrade to, and it was really hard to find, but I did manage to get one. It's on the way, and it gets rid of that that tightness in the back for that last couple inches, which should allow us to increase the spring tension without increasing the amount of force we're going to have to put to the end of the spring or the hardest portion of it. So that's great too, which will allow us to maneuver this spring and pull the bolt back tons of times by the time the game ends without gassing ourselves out. Now, the reason we have to make sure this stays as light as possible too is because I do need to put on some camera equipment. You'll notice that I do throw a camera up on top of my scope, like you should with any sniper, and then I even like that first-person point of view, or not first-person point of view, the I guess third-person point of view camera facing forwards. It definitely adds for some nice shots. And then following that build, one of my favorite things to do is camouflage it. With the TAC 41, you'll notice I almost went for this like dusty green and tan style color. It looks almost a little bit more dried. For this guy, I want to go for a different style pattern, maybe like a zebra stripe or something like that. And then I want to add in some like darker mossy style greens, a little bit more like the vegetation's more alive. I think that should be really cool. And then that should finish up that series, and hopefully everything goes pretty smooth. Then we'll get some gameplay going. So I guess this is the start of the Silverback SRS upgrade series. Stay tuned, shoot me a follow, and hope you're as excited as I am.